Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Major General Walter Pyatt and Command Sergeant Major Samuel Rourke, both of the 10th Mountain Division and Fort Drum, which are unable to attend today's ceremony, welcome to the 10th Mountain Division Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. observance. Before we would begin, I'd like to acknowledge our distinguished guests for today's observance. The Honorable Anthony Keating, Civilian Aide to the Secretary of the Army, New York State. Ms. Walter E. Pyatt, spouse of the Commanding General, 10th Mountain Division Light Infantry in Fort Drum. Ms. Mary Jo Richards, the Constituent Liaison for the Representative Elise Stefanik, and Ms. Gregory K. Anderson, spouse to the Deputy Commanding General for Support, 10th Mountain Division Light Infantry in Fort Drum. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand and remain standing for the national anthem performed by the 10th Mountain Division Band and the invocation given by Chaplain Handy of the 277 Aviation Support Battalion. Today's ceremony is an indoor ceremony. Saluting is not required.
I invite you to join with me for the invocation. Let us pray. Heavenly Father God, we thank you for a day to remember and celebrate the life and contributions of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., a day to reaffirm the American ideals of freedom, justice, and opportunity for all, a day for love, not hate, for understanding, not anger, for peace, not war. A day when the community rids itself of the barriers which divide it and comes together as one. Now bless our time together and everyone that helped to make this event possible. Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, you may be seated. Thank you, 10th Mountain Division Band and Chaplain Handy. To maximize community involvement, the 10th Combat Aviation Brigade invited the community to help with the observance. 10th Mountain Zone Cub Scout Pack 26 provided the displays in the foyer, and FRGs from across 10th Cab decorated and placed the centerpieces in front of you today. We also invited our SnapLink partner, Copenhagen Central School District, to participate in a video which you will see later in this observance. Each year, America observes Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday on the third Monday of January. The goal and purpose of these observances is to educate while breaking perceptions and stereotypes and driving home the importance of dignity and respect. The theme for this year's observance is "The time is always right to do what is right." This theme serves to help address a reoccurring question that Dr. King would always have. What are you doing for others? As service members, we must always embrace this theme and use it as an azimuth check. We must ensure we are always doing the right thing and always striving to help others. Dr. Martin Luther King observance calls for a day of action. It is a day on, not a day off. With this being said, the 10th Combat Aviation Brigade and the American Red Cross collaborated to host a mobile blood drive. Dr. Martin Luther King spent his life changing lives, and we invite everybody else out to change lives as well. The blood drive will be Monday, 21 January 2019 from 10 to 1400 in the commissary parking lot. As we come together this afternoon, it is a time for us to remember the injustices that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. fought. A time to remember his freedom and dignity and respect for all people. A time to remember the message of change through nonviolence. It is a celebration of equality, a celebration of freedom, and a celebration of a legacy of one of America's greatest visionary leaders. Over 50 years ago, America was captivated by a young, motivated preacher who called a generation into action and epitomized selfless service. As a nation and as a division, we have made significant strides forward. However, the work is not yet finished. Again, as we continue to move forward, the question is raised, what are you doing for others? Please take a look at the 2019 Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. observance poster. Notice the poster has Dr. King looking upward, looking towards a brighter future, and he is surrounded by a multitude of colors that complement each other. The poster reminds us that it is a day on, not a day off, and it poses a simple yet powerful statement. The time is always right to do what is right. Please take a look at this video from the 10th Combat Aviation Brigade on Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sergeant First Class James Webb, the 10th Combat Aviation Brigade Equal Opportunity Advisor. Welcome to the 10th Mountain Division in Fort Drum's Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Observance. Each year, the Department of Defense and the nation joins together in celebrating the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. We do this through a day of community service. It is a day on, not a day off. This year, the 10th Combat Aviation Brigade and the American Red Cross has collaborated to host a Life and Legacy blood drive. The blood drive will be on 21 January 2019 from 10 to 1400 hours in the commissary parking lot. Like the United States Army of today, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. realized the vital importance of treating each other with dignity and respect. Please watch this brief history of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. as presented by the soldiers of the 10th Combat Aviation Brigade.
Born in Atlanta, Georgia, Dr. King became widely regarded as America's preeminent advocate of nonviolence and one of the greatest nonviolent leaders for change in world history. He drew upon inspiration from both his Christian faith and the peaceful teachings of Mahatma Gandhi. Dr. King led multiple nonviolent movements in the late 1950s and 60s to achieve legal equality for African Americans in the United States. While others were advocating for freedom by any means necessary, including violence, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. used the power of words and acts of nonviolent resistance such as protests, grassroots organizing, and civil disobedience to achieve seemingly impossible goals. Dr. King went on to lead similar campaigns against poverty and international conflict, always maintaining fidelity to his principles that men and women everywhere, regardless of color or creed, were equal members of the human family. The holiday celebrates his life and achievements and encourages people everywhere to reflect on the principles of nonviolent social change and racial equality. Tragically, he was assassinated by James Earl Ray in Memphis, Tennessee on April 4th, 1968. However, like a true warrior, his legacy continues to unite people across all races and serves as a beacon of hope during turbulent times. Dr. King was a phenomenal person who in life and even after death promotes dignity and respect combined with equality. In recognition of his accomplishments and impact on the world, Congress passed a bill designating Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday as a national holiday starting in 1986. The Department of Defense first observed Martin Luther King Jr. Day in 1985, a year before it became a federal holiday. On August 23, 1994, Congress passed the Martin Luther King Jr. Holiday and Service Act, designating Dr. King's holiday as a day of volunteer service. Today is a day that we take action and work toward accomplishing his dream of working together. The holiday is celebrated at all U.S. military installations and is observed by local groups in more than 100 nations. Today, our armed forces are stronger because of the perseverance of Dr. King and so many others in this country who have fought for civil rights and equality for all. On this day of action, we are inspired to continue being a model for our nation. We will now hear from 10th Combat Aviation Brigade soldiers who will share Dr. King's words with us.
Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that.
I believe that unarmed truth and unconditional love will have the final word in reality.
Life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others?
Everybody can be great because anybody can serve. You don't have to have a college degree to serve. You don't have to make your subject and verb agree to serve. You only need a heart full of grace and a soul generated by love.
I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal.
Peace is not merely a distant goal that we seek, but a means by which we arrive at that goal.
Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
All labor that uplifts humanity has dignity and importance, and should be undertaken with painstaking excellence.
We know through painful experience that freedom is never volunteered by the oppressor, but demanded by the oppressed.
The quality, not the longevity, of one's life is what is important.
We shall overcome because the arch of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice.
A genuine leader is not a searcher for consensus, but a molder of consensus.
Dr. Martin Luther King was a vital figure of the modern era and a pivotal figure in the civil rights movement. In sermons and speeches, Dr. King's voice rang out with the call for us to work towards a better tomorrow.
His actions inspired men and women, young and old, in this nation and around the world. Please join the hundreds of thousands of people who serve on MLK Day and throughout the year. America's new foundation will be built one community at a time, and it starts with you.
Dr. Martin Luther King's life was truly a climb to glory. During his life, he reached the mountaintop where he could see the promised land. So today and every day, we should continue to climb until all people share the equality that Dr. King worked so hard to achieve. So no matter what, keep moving, and we'll all meet at the top on our climb to glory.
Dreams can be motivators and game changers. What can start as a tiny seed from a dream can manifest into a changes events that change the world. When making dreams reality, we are only limited by our imagination, ethics, values, cultures, and beliefs. When guided by these dreams, any dream worth having is one worth a reality. Was it just Dr. King who had a dream? Look at our formations today. Are we not a diverse organization that looks at fitness, merit, and capability with no room based on judgment for color or creed? More importantly, isn't it just as important for us to teach generations to understand the sacrifices and how hard it was for a dream to become reality? To ensure the educational pieces of this observance, we went out to Copenhagen Central School District and we collaborated on the following video.
I say to you today, my friends, even though we face difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed.
We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal.
And if America is to be a great nation, this must become true. So let freedom ring from the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire.
Let freedom ring from the mighty mountains of New York.
Let freedom ring from the heightening Alleghenies of Pennsylvania.
Let freedom ring from the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado.
Let freedom ring from the curvaceous slopes of California.
Let freedom ring from Stone Mountain of Georgia.
Let freedom ring from the Lookout Mountain of Tennessee.
Let freedom ring from every hill and molehill of Mississippi. From every mountainside, let freedom ring.
I have a dream that one day every valley shall be exalted, every hill and mountain shall be made low. The rough places shall be made plain, and the crooked places shall be made straight. And the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. This is our hope. And with this faith, we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope.
With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we will be able to work together, pray together, struggle together, and to stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day.
Let freedom ring, and when this happens, when we allow freedom to ring, when we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
Unfortunately, Copenhagen students were not able to make the trip due to the weather, but we have a trip planned to make sure they receive the recognition they deserve. Our guest speaker today is a good friend of mine and a mentor of mine. His biography is located inside of today's program. Please welcome Master Chief Johnny Ford from the United States Fleet Forces Command.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the 10th Mountain Division, as well as our distinguished guest, the Honorable Anthony Keating, Mrs. Walter E. Pyatt, Miss Mary Richards, and Mrs. Gregory Anderson. Thank you for attending as well. I bring you greetings from the United States Fleet Forces Command, Norfolk, Virginia. I would like to thank all of you for your attendance and for supporting this observance here today. I would also like to send a warm thank you to Sergeant First Class J.B. Webb. Just a little background, I was in DOMI, or the Defense Equal Opportunity Management Institute, a couple of years ago, and I met Sergeant First Class Webb, and as the class president, I was in charge of a lot of different things there, and Sergeant First Class Webb just was a person who was high speed all the time. And he seems like he's still the same way. But he really helped so many people out while we were in the course. And I'll tell you, he was directly responsible for at least a quarter of that class not failing. So I appreciate you. Thank you for the invite. And I just wanted to let you know that, and I really appreciate you. It is a privilege and a pleasure to be here with you today to talk about the legacy of the late, great Dr. Martin Luther King. I am humbled to have received this invite. I do have a disclaimer before I start. I love to talk and potentially go off script. So I brought my lovely wife, Janine, here with me today to sort of give me those nonverbal cues if I start talking a little bit too much. I shared with all the Equal Opportunity Advisors earlier that I wrote two versions of this speech. One was if the ceremony goes from about 9 or 10 in the morning, or after lunch speech. We're gonna do the after lunch speech because I know it's hard for people to keep their attention span after they've eaten and when they're looking forward to getting off and going home. So we're gonna do the after lunch speech, and I think I timed myself between 11 and 12 minutes. So hopefully within about 12 minutes, we'll have you on to the next thing in the program. I'd like to begin this conversation with a quote from Dr. King. "Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that." His message of nonviolence, peaceful protest, and equality is as pertinent now as it was during his lifetime. Also pertinent is the truth and power behind that message and the need that we still have in our society at present. As we commemorate this Martin Luther King Day, we can look around at the news, at our communities, and see that we still have a significant racial divide in our country. The marches, protests, and even divisions among friends and families show that racism and discrimination did not end with the civil rights movement. Indeed, there is still much work to be done today. Today across the country, we remember Dr. King in parades, speeches, schools, church sermons. People honor him and his legacy. But it's important to remember, he wasn't always so popular. He wasn't seen as a hero by many people during his lifetime. Martin Luther King Jr. was an agitator. He was an activist. He made trouble. He did not accept the status quo. He stood up to authority, faced down fire hoses, attacked dogs, tear gas, and police batons. According to the King Center in Atlanta, Georgia, he was arrested 29 times in his lifetime. He worked with many other civil rights leaders of the time and led marches and strikes. He and his followers blocked traffic For instance, during the 54-mile march from Selma to Montgomery. They participated in civil disobedience by peacefully protesting against unjust laws and practices. They disrupted public transportation and demonstrated outside government offices, schools, and commercial districts. Martin Luther King and many others like him fought segregation and discrimination when it was very unpopular and very, very dangerous to do so. He worked with religious leaders of all denominations. He worked with students, the workers, people of color, and white people to try to force changes in a society that didn't want changes. He and other civil rights activists fought against inequality at their own risk and safety. They fought to make sure equal means equal and justice means justice, and that every citizen is treated fairly. We know that in the South there were laws enforcing segregation and discrimination. That legacy of racism was enshrined in law, plain to see. Yet the North wasn't free of racism or discrimination either. Even if it wasn't blatantly backed up by laws, in the South, laws enforced segregation. In the North, schools and neighborhoods were segregated not by law, but economics and social divisions. Riots, lynchings, voter suppression, job discrimination, these happened in both North and the South. While it was certainly more blatant in the South, racism is a problem that affected and affects us still today. It does not end with the dismantling of Jim Crow laws. Racism is a problem that persists. Today, the idea of separate water fountains, bathrooms, or people of color having to sit at the back of the bus seems preposterous. It's inconceivable that it was once illegal for blacks and whites to marry. But the truth is, it's simply not that long ago. As a matter of fact, a huge number of us in attendance could probably ask our parents, grandparents, or other elders about their memories of racial injustice in this country. They can tell you stories about things they've seen or things they remember happening that would seem absolutely absurd today. Yet the fact is, it hasn't been that long. I'm reminded of a quote by the brilliant African-American academic, author, and civil rights leader, W.E.B. Du Bois. In 1903, he wrote, "The problem of the 20th century is the problem of the color line." So what is the color line, you might wonder? The color line is the division between people of color and those not of color. The color line was first mentioned by civil rights leader, abolitionist, and former slave Frederick Douglass, who talked about the color line back in 1881. It has been discussed and debated by scholars, authors, and activists since then. It has been about 115 years since Du Bois identified it as the defining issue of the 20th century. It's easy to look back to 1903, where there were still Civil War veterans and former slaves walking the streets of America, and see why Du Bois would have called the color line the most important issue. Yet here we are today, and those generations have passed, but they've left behind their legacy with us and the society. When you look around and see the unrest, tension, protests in America, you can see that the color line persists. Sadly, it's still dividing some of us. The problem of the color line stretches from our grandparents and great-grandparents through to us today. Will it continue from us to our next generations to follow? To our children, our grandchildren, or great-grandchildren? For the soldiers and civilians in attendance, I want you to imagine your own children and grandchildren asking you about the history of racial tensions in our country. Think about what's happening today, the racial strife, the marches, the protests, arguments. It has only been a little more than 63 years since the modern civil rights era began with Rosa Parks. How would the events of today look 63 years from now? In 63 years, will we be still fighting the same fights and having the same arguments today about race? Or will we continue to work at making progress and move forward to a place where the color line does not divide us for another 63 years? Leaders like Martin Luther King fought to destroy the color line, and they paid for it with their lives. It's a dehumanizing and traffic separation that hurts us all. And if we truly wish to honor the legacy of Dr. King, we must look at ourselves and our own communities and ask some hard questions. Where do I see racism in my daily life? Where do I see racism in my community? Where do I see racism within my ranks? Racism embedded in institutions and politics. Is it possible I only understand this topic from one perspective because of the color of my skin or where I was raised? How can I learn more and seek to fight racism and inequality? How can I do my part? Today I ask you to celebrate the legacy of Dr. King, but I want you to do more than that. I want you to question yourself and be honest about your answers. I want you to educate yourself about history. I want you to read books and essays from perspectives that are new or different from you. I want you to make an effort to cross the color line and talk with people from different racial or socioeconomic backgrounds or different religions. Try and listen to their perspectives and experiences with an open heart and an open mind. Try to imagine how you would feel in their situation. Can we listen to each other's experiences and try to bridge the gap that still separates people in our country? Can we embrace our fellow Americans and work to ensure that we are not the divided states, but rather the United States of America? Yes, I believe we can, but it's up to us. Dr. King and other leaders of the civil rights movement helped to bring about massive changes in America, but their work is not finished. Here we are years later, and the color line still persists. As a country, as a people, we need to continue to work to ensure equality, opportunity, and justice for all. This is our work, my friends. The time is now, right now. We can't shy away. We can't depend on anyone else to do it. This is our mission, and if we are brave and steadfast, as I know we are, we can all move forward together as one people. I'd like to close with another quote from Dr. King. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Remember this quote as you go forward. Remember to stand up against injustice and speak out for what is right. Remember to listen to the perspectives of people opposite of you and keep an open mind. Remember to keep learning and challenging yourself as you go forward. Do your part to ensure the color line ends here. When thinking of Dr. King, remember the mountains he had to climb. Look back and understand that he climbed to glory. By addressing these issues in our formations and communities, we will build stronger bonds, and that will help keep us ready now and relevant tomorrow. Who?
Thank you, Master Chief, for your contribution to today's program. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, Lieutenant Colonel Jim Scullion and Sergeant Major Greg Turpin of the 10th Combat Aviation Brigade, more specifically 110 ARB, will present both Master Chief Ford and his wife Janine Ford for their participation and support of today's program. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, Lieutenant Colonel Scullion and Sergeant Major Turpin will present Amanda Wynn, the Scoutmaster of Pack 26, with a certificate of appreciation for the Pack's participation in today's program.
As we close the formal portion of today's observance, I'd just like to give a final thank you to all the people who came together to make this event special. To Master Chief Johnny Ford and his wife Janine, thank you so much for coming all the way up from Norfolk, Virginia to be here in the North Country and serve us as the guest speaker and sharing this celebration with us. Special thanks to Sergeant First Class Webb for all the work he put into this event, for the planning, for the coordination, for pulling in our community members, the Copenhagen School District, the Cub Scout Pack 26, the American Red Cross, the soldiers from across the 10th Cab, to put together an outstanding ceremony and honor Dr. King's courage, action, and impact on our nation. Thank you to all the family readiness groups across the 10th Cab. They created, designed, and put together all the table centerpieces that you have today for the event. And finally, to the Commons staff who hosted us today and made sure this was going to be a very professional and outstanding event. Dr. King would be proud to see this collaboration from across the division, installation, and community. We'll remember today's theme, that time is always right to do what is right, and use Dr. King's example of courage, service, and leadership as we continue to climb. Thank you very much, and please join me in a round of applause for everybody that went into producing this outstanding event. Thank you.
In closing this month, let us remember the injustices and challenges faced by Dr. King and celebrate the changes that have been made. Let us volunteer and serve in our community and remember to always do what's right, even when it is hard. Let our moral compass guide us in the direction and always strive to help others. As this observance draws to a close, let us remember most importantly that this is a day on, not a day off, and that the time is always right to do what is right. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for the playing of the 10th Mountain Song and the Army Song. Ladies and gentlemen, you may be seated, and this concludes the formal portion of the program. We would like to thank you for your continued support of the 10th Mountain Division's Equal Opportunity Program. Feel free to stay behind and try some of the appetizers. Fly to glory, climb to glory.